Hey everyone, this is Kevin from thechesswebsite.com. Today we're going to be continuing our coverage of the 2014 Blitz World Championships. Today we're going to be looking at a match from the last round. So they played 21 rounds, both Thursday and Friday combined. White's going to be played by Magnus Carlsen. Going into this final round, Magnus Carlsen actually has a full point lead on second place. If he can just draw or win this match, he will be the Blitz champion, which is crazy considering he just won the Rapid Championship 2 days ago, and he won the World Champion for normal chess or normal time chess just a few months prior at the end of 2013 against Vishy Anand. So this would be unprecedented to win all three in less than a year. So that's what he's going to be going for. Again, if he can get a draw very, very quickly, that would be fine for him. Unfortunately, he runs into a very tough opponent, Anton Korobov, actually the 2013 European Blitz chess champion. So very, very strong challenger across the board from him. Good news for Magnus Carlsen is he is playing the white pieces. We'll go ahead and get into it. Starts with pawn to d4, pawn c4, and then we see from Anton, we see the semi-Slav defense, so a very strong defense from black, but kind of a waiting defense to see what his opponent's going to do. We see just a natural progression of development moves from both sides of the board. Nothing too crazy. Both sides recognizing the magnitude of this game in particular. And so both sides just developing pieces as normal. If we get into it after this is the 12th move. Let's try to determine what both sides are going to be playing right now. White is going to be looking to attack this isolated pawn here on d5. Also wants to try to find something for his light square bishop. His dark square bishop is fine here on b2. Magnus Carlsen can really control this long diagonal right here. But his light square bishop's sort of awkwardly placed. It's defending this knight here on f3, but it can't come to c4, a natural square, can't come to b5. You may not even want to play this d3 because you may actually want to get your rook behind here on d1. He may also try to just exchange off some pieces. He'll definitely want to get his rook over here to c1 at some point, get that very active. Wants to bring his rook over here to d1, and then just see how play continues. But a lot of his effort's going to be focused on the square here on d5 right away. Now black, on the other hand, Anton is really going to be trying to first complete his development. He first needs to get his light square bishop out, hasn't moved yet. Get his queen involved into the game. He has a few options as far as this pawn here on d5. He can try to hold on to it, although he is going to have to be playing somewhat defensive. He can get his rooks behind it if he wants to try to hold on to it. Or if not, he could give up that material, and hopefully for that pawn he could get some compensation as far as an attack on the queen side or maybe the king side. So either way, definitely both sides have some options that they can do going into the middle game. We now see bishop here to g4, again getting that light square bishop involved. Knight capturing here on e5, nice little exchange. Bishop coming here, taking here on g4, and then the knight recapturing here. And I love this move from Magnus Carlsen, recognizing that his light square bishop, it was going to be difficult to get involved into the action. If he had a couple hours in the match, it would be very easy for him to get a very active light square bishop. In Blitz, you only get 3 minutes for your entire game. You get 2 minutes incremental per move, so you do get a little bit of time added each time you play something, but you don't want to spend a lot of your time just trying to get one of your pieces developed. So you usually have somewhat of a different approach in different situations. If it's Blitz or normal, even Rapid, you have a little bit more time. So Magnus Carlsen recognizing some of his weakness and immediately gets that off the board, and now he doesn't have to worry about getting his light square bishop involved into the game. So now we see pawn here to h3, kicking back that knight. Knight back here to e2. Did have a few options. He could have easily brought his rook over here to c1. He could have brought his rook over here to d1. I think both of those make a lot of sense. I'm not really sure if he would have chosen one of those if he had more time, but knight to e2 is the move. Rook to c8 makes a lot of sense, bringing your rooks to those open files. Queen back to b1, so definitely going to try some sort of exchange or something crazy because right now Magnus Carlsen is kind of backed up in this corner right here. Queen to e7. Now decides to go ahead and exchange off pieces right there. And then knight to d4. And this is actually a great outpost for Magnus Carlsen. This pawn here on e3 is really tough for black to do anything with, so he can just kind of hang out here in the center of the board, which is where you want your knight to hang out. The knight in the center just has more options on board to move, and so he's kind of going to control the center of the board. Black doesn't have any pawns that he can move to kind of force this to move, so this is a great square for Magnus Carlsen. Black now plays knight to e4, does have his own outpost here. Queen to b2, pawn to f5, starting to counterattack on the king side. Rook over here to c1, important move to counterattack this long file that black is kind of controlling. And then a pivotal move in the game. Anton decides to play pawn to f4, and the sequencing is just a little bit off. The pawn taking here on f4 is going to be uncontested. The queen can't take the knight because the queen's protecting it. Can't really take the pawn because knight to e6 is just really awkward, forking the rook and the queen. Doesn't want to take with his rook because the rook can just swing up here to c8 and capture. But if we look at this, he could have chosen a different line. Instead of pawn to f4, he could have first taken with his rook here on c1. Magnus Carlsen, if he decided to take with his queen, let's say, that would protect the square here on f4. But then after pawn to f4, then it gets awkward because the pawn can't take here because then the queen would just capture here on d4. So, you know, white's kind of stuck in this weird situation. If instead he takes with his rook, you know, still kind of stands. Pawn to f4, he can now take with his pawn, you know, because this knight's still being protected. But then the rook can just swing down here on f4 because it's now being unprotected by the queen here that would have been on c1. So it definitely would have been a lot better if he decided to go ahead and take first on c1. Unfortunately, in the game, decided to push forward with f4 and just gave Magnus Carlsen a free pawn in the game. So the queen has to come back here to f6. And then we see pawn here to g3, solidifying the pawn chain over on the king side, pushing forward with h4 as well. Again, Anton's just really trying to find some sort of counterplay, recognizing he's down in material. Magnus Carlsen is very good when it comes down to the end game, and so he's just kind of trying to force something right here. Rook to d1, protecting this knight here on d4, wants to make sure he can activate his queen, doesn't want his most important piece on board, trying tied down to this defense here on d4. So rook to d1, very good move. Rook to c8, Magnus Carlsen has no problem exchanging off material on board. Queen to e2, rook down here to c3, and again this is just kind of a last ditch effort from Anton to try to steal the game away. All Magnus Carlsen has to do is just play correctly. So queen taking here on h5. Again, in a long match, black wouldn't just be sacrificing all material just to try to get a quick win, but recognizing that at this point in the game, both sides have about 25 seconds, I think we're on the clock at this point, for even Magnus Carlsen. So he recognizes that Magnus Carlsen can easily slip up at any given time, and he can kind of steal this game from him. Now the knight takes here on g3, we do see the take, and the rook takes here on g3, and this is probably the next pivotal point into the game. Magnus Carlsen definitely has to make sure he plays correctly. If there's just one misstep, if he just plays king to h1, all of a sudden things might start looking pretty bad for him. Queen to f4, all of a sudden Anton is really threatening mate right here. We could see queen take here on d5 check, but then there's no way for white to continue with his attack. He may have to come down here, bring his knight to f3, trying to stave off the attack, but then Black just has too many active pieces on board. He could eventually try for a perpetual check, or actually just go for the juggler and try to actually get a win here. So after the pieces come off the board, both sides would probably have about 10 seconds left. It would be very, very rapid for both sides to try to advance one of their pawns, but no one has a clear-cut advantage in this particular situation. Now, if we come back on board, Magnus Carlsen doesn't really make a lot of mistakes because he's just too good at chess. Plays king to f2. You want to centralize your king as much as possible, make it an attacker, start to control some of the squares, and that's exactly what he does. The queen does come here to f4, check, but then knight to f3. This stops pretty much all the attacks that Black had. There's no good way for him to continue. He does try rook to h3, so that maybe he could play rook to h2. The knight can't move because it's being pinned down by this queen right here. But then Magnus Carlsen just starts going to work. Queen to d5, forcing the king to come over here. Queen to h4, and then this particular spot, Black resigns. Magnus Carlsen not only just had to get a draw, but actually wins in the last match to take the gold medal in the, and yes, they actually do give medals out, to take the gold medal in the Blitz champion. So we now have the world champion of normal time chess, of rapid chess, so 15 minutes, and then now Blitz chess, which is the first time it's happened. Definitely phenomenal. That they haven't always had the tri-format of normal, Blitz, and rapid. I'm sure at one point in time someone else could have done it. But Magnus Carlsen, phenomenal showing from him. I think in a few years, maybe some of the young guns may challenge him in chess. But right now, he's just way better than everyone. In every single format, he is just better. So, his opponents couldn't really do too much in this situation. It would have been checkmate, pretty soon. He could have brought his king back here, rook d8. It doesn't really matter. He can just force his opponent to move, capture the queen. No real good square. So again, his opponent, he was only down to a few seconds anyway, just decided to go ahead and resign. So a great match for Magnus Carlsen. 21 rounds of Blitz. It can be pretty exhausting because your mind just has to go 100 miles an hour. But he found so many good moves and just dominated the field. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the coverage of both the Rapid and the Blitz Championship. Congratulations to Magnus Carlsen, the world champion in pretty much every format out there in chess that matters. They did ask him about bullet chess, which is just 1 minute. He said he doesn't think his hands would move fast enough, but he definitely thinks he could contend. They also asked him about the formats where all the pieces are random, Chess 365, and he said he would love to play that. So it'd be interesting to watch him play a format where a lot of the opening theory is not memorized, because that's where I think he does very, very well, although he does well in all aspects of the chess. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video series.